Good evening, everyone. I'm super excited for tonight's event. Since 2012, we've been hosting a wide variety of events. We've hosted over 100, and we've had thousands of people been able to engage with our discourse that we put on here at Berkeley, and tonight is no exception. Welcome to tonight's edition, Jaylen Brown at the Berkeley Forum. We like to start all of our events with a land acknowledgement, so I will be reading that now. As we do at all of our events, the Berkeley Forum would like to take this time to acknowledge that our events and the UC Berkeley's campus sit on the territory of the Ohlone people and that we benefit from this occupation of this land. It is important to us that we recognize this history out of respect for the Muwekma Ohlone who are still present in Berkeley and the Bay Area today. For more Native education resources on our campus, we encourage you to look into the Centers for Educational Justice and Community Engagement. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to Brian Kim, our event manager tonight, to introduce tonight's speaker.
It is with immense honor that I introduce Mr. Jaylen Brown to the Berkeley Forum. Jaylen Brown is an NBA basketball player for the Boston Celtics. A former Golden Bear, Brown was a star player on the Cal men's basketball team during the 2015-16 season, earning first-team All Pac-12 honors and the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year title. His impact on the court was coupled with his pursuit of excellence off the court, enrolling in upper division and graduate level classes in UC Berkeley's Global Poverty and Practice and Cultural Studies of Sport and Education programs, all during his freshman year. After his stint with the Cal Bears, Brown was drafted 3rd overall in the 2016 NBA draft and quickly emerged as a dominant player for the Celtics, leading to his selection in the 2021 NBA All-Star team as a reserve. A passionate advocate for education reform and technology, Brown has spoken at Harvard and MIT about his perspectives on institutionalized sports and social stratification in the education system. In 2019, Brown was elected as the youngest vice president of the NBA Players Association. It is now my pleasure to welcome to the in-person stage for the first time in nearly 2 years, Jaylen Brown and tonight's student moderator and forum president, Amatara Oloye.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jaylen Brown. I attended this university about 5 years ago or so, and along the lines, I met some amazing mentors and professors that helped shape my love for education, as well as my fight for inequality. One of them is not here today, Professor Hardy Fry. He passed away a couple months ago. He was my student activism teacher. And we used to have a lot of conversations, and I used to enjoy every second of it. And I wish he was here today. I wish I could hear his voice. May his soul rest in peace. So I've traveled all over the world, and I still yet to find a place as unique as Cal Berkeley, to be honest. It's become a home for me and my family. From the history of activism, from the community outreach, the overall geography of the campus, it's hard to overlook. I still get the question to this day, like, why did you choose Cal Berkeley over all of the universities? And I look around like, isn't it obvious? Like, from, yes, sir. From insight from Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Mario Savio, Eldridge Cleaver, Huey P. Newton, from the technological advancements of Silicon Valley that have arguably made the world a better place, to our Habitat for Humanity, the people who protest the chemicals that are hurting Earth, and the plant-based community. I love it all, and Berkeley is always going to be a special place to me. I wanted to talk about my journey from Berkeley to Boston, of course, but I wanted to do it through a lens of Panopticism, dynamic normalization, and break down the concept of media training at the same time. So it's something that I always wanted to talk about. A lot of you guys are probably familiar with it, but I thought what better place to do it than here at UC Berkeley. Before I do that, I wanted to share a story. Since I still get the question so much about why you went to Cal, I thought I might as well share with my fellow Berkeley students the real reason I chose to go to Cal. And it's a day, it's a story. It's probably one of the worst days of my life. It's a trauma story. And it's shaped me to be who I am and helped me break out of kind of the dynamic normalization that exists within society. So basically one day, I wake up, my coach calls me, says, get to school on time because we're having an assembly today, you want some awards. So I'm like, okay, bet, fall back asleep. So I wake up, I'm late, I'm rushing to try to get to school. My mom calls me and tells me to hurry up and get to school, etc. I'm driving through a neighborhood that I drive through every single day. And I'm late, of course, trying to rush and get to school. We got an assembly. And I ended up running a stop sign in the neighborhood. It was an officer off duty that happened to be sitting in the neighborhood, and I saw him see me run a stop sign, so I was hoping he wasn't gonna pull me over. He ended up pulling me over. So I called my mom, I told her I was gonna be late. She cursed me out, etc. And then the cop, came up to my window and I said, good evening, officer. And he said, stop talking. So I was like, okay. Then he asked me, why did you run the stop sign? And I told him that, I was late to school. I went to Wheeler High School. I got an assembly today. I won some awards. He said, okay, you're talking too much. So instantly I felt like something was wrong here. And then my response was, okay, I'm just trying to answer the questions that you asked to the best of my ability. And he said to me, are you being smart? And when he said that, instantly fear kind of went through me. I understood that, I feel like I've seen this movie before, So I told myself that I was just gonna be quiet. And I ended up saying that out loud, and he heard me and says that probably would be smart. So he goes back. I'm waiting about 25 minutes. I'm telling my mom I'm gonna get to school as fast as possible. And then all of a sudden another car pulls up, and it's a cop car. So most people in this room knows what it means when that second cop car pulls up. And if you don't know, 9 times out of 10 is nothing good. So I'm waiting. I'm still in disbelief because I'm seeing all this happen. But I'm like, there's no way that this is for me. Like, it's impossible. Like, all of this is going through my mind. As a senior in high school, I'm 18 years old. The cop, I remember like it was yesterday, he kind of gets out of the car, and he's walking towards me, and his hand is kind of towards his weapon. And I'm looking at all of this through my rearview mirror, and I'm seeing it, and instantly my body is just froze. Like my life flashes before my eyes. Like I'm stuck with fear. He's yelling, get out of the car, get out of the car. I can't move, I'm stuck. Like my life is flashing before my eyes, everything I've done to this point. At the time, it was Trayvon Martin, it was Mike Brown, and I thought I was about to be next. And I'm froze with fear. And the cop just keeps yelling, and he gets closer and closer, and he tries to snatch my door open. But this part was funny because my door was locked. So when he snatched it open, he almost fell. But I think that made him more upset because when I got out, when he got me out of the car, he kind of like was aggressive, wrestled me to the ground a little bit. The other cop car came around and kind of searched my car. And they're yelling and telling me to shut up. I don't know what's going on. Imagine the confusion. I'm thinking I just ran a stop sign, and all of this is happening. Like, there's no information being shared whatsoever. So they tell me you get to make one phone call, and it's for somebody to come pick up the car who's going to be impounded, right? So the only person I could think of course, was my mom. So I called my mom and told her to come pick up the car. My mom at the time worked about 25 minutes away. So I'm thinking she's not going to get here in time. Like, there's no way. Like, when I tell you my mom got there in 2 minutes, I was like, did you fly? Like, how did you get here so fast? So she got there. I later realized how she got there so fast. So they ended up taking me in. I ended up going through the whole process, which was embarrassing, humiliating. That's really why I haven't told this story a lot. And I'm going through this process, and what happens is, and the bail ends up being, I spent the school day in jail, or holding. The bail ended up being $29, $39. It was very expensive, or something like that. But what gave me the perspective is that, turned out my license had been suspended. And in Georgia, if you don't change your address on your license within 30 days, if you move, it becomes annulled. So he was well within his right to take me in. But as an 18-year-old, 2 minutes from school, you chose to take me to jail rather than to take me to school. So for me, it was like, okay, he was well within his right, but was it right? You understand what I'm saying? So, but what gave me the perspective is, I was on the way to an assembly where I won some awards, and my mom was gonna surprise me that day because I had won so many awards. She was gonna come out the back and surprise me in front of the whole school. And that day I won Mr. Georgia Basketball. I won Positive Athlete of the Year. We had superlatives that day. And I won most likely to be successful, most likely to be a millionaire, blah, blah, blah. And that same day I was taking my mugshot. And I spent the school day in prison, or in holding. So that hit me hard. And I remember, like it was yesterday, it was one of the worst days of my life. The next morning, the AJC picked it up. USA Today picked the story up. You can still look it up on your phone today if you don't believe me. Bleacher Report picked it up, and the headline was 5-star athlete Jaylen Brown has been arrested. So I was like, okay. And then the indications of the article was college coaches don't like when their athletes are in trouble with the law. This may have an indication on his future. So I remember reading that and my heart dropped. Like, all of this because I ran a stop sign? There's no way. But it was the truth, and for me, what happened, the aftermath of it, after these articles came out, college coaches kind of fell back a little bit. They used to blow my phone up, stopped texting me. At the time, social media had just became like prevalent. This is like 2015, so it was starting to emerge, and a lot of people were like commenting like, you ruined it, you blew it, like you were so close, now you're gonna be nothing, da da da, just trolls on the internet. But as a kid, I'm seeing this, and then the McDonald's All-American committee, who had already accepted me to be a McDonald's All-American, was reviewing if they were gonna let me participate in the game. And I'm like, wow. And in that moment, in that feeling, in that embarrassment, and is where I decided that I was gonna utilize my platform. So at the time, I was leaning towards maybe a Kentucky or a Kansas, which are pretty good schools, but I ended up going to the best, which is UC Berkeley. I wanted to align with a place with a liberal arts school with a history of activism, a school that's involved in community, involved in movements constantly, always, who've given their stage to speakers such as MLK, Malcolm X, and always given their students the voice to be able to speak freely and talk about some of the things they're seeing in this community. Believe it or not, which some people may or may not, that's the reason why I chose to go to UC Berkeley. And no other. I wanted to align with that. And dynamic normalization is what I'm gonna be talking about. And I'm gonna break down what that means, but it's kind of funny because there's nothing dynamically normal about Berkeley whatsoever. When I got here, I'm from Georgia. Like kids our age wear Nikes and Jordans and whatnot. When I got here, everybody wore Birkenstocks. It was a complete culture shock whatsoever. But it challenged me and it pushed me in ways that I appreciated. And Berkeley is a place where my spirit aligned and it pushed me to be more than an athlete. So the things I want to talk about today is, Panopticism, dynamic normalization, the concept of media training, and how that applied to me in my experience as a black athlete. And for those unfamiliar with Panopticism, Panopticism is a philosophy developed by a French philosopher named Michel Foucault. He developed this philosophy in 1975 in his work, Discipline and Punish. He explored the evolution of power and the dynamic of it and how it's changed from physical authority to psychological authority. And to demonstrate his point, he examined a British social reformer named Jeremy Bentham, who created a Panopticon Design. It was a prison that Jeremy Bentham designed that had a circular shape and had prison cells in the external walls. And there was a watchtower placed directly in the middle of the prison. The theory is that if I put a watchtower in the middle of a prison, the prisoners would be less likely to fall out of line and would be more likely to not commit crimes. So Foucault uses this as his theory of modern power, that surveillance is used as a key instrument in modern institutions to govern and control the masses. And how this translates to a modern concept is that, okay, pedestrians are less likely to drop litter, graffiti artists are less likely to spray paint a wall, or drivers are less likely to run a red light, of course, but it's also important to understand the trade-off that surveillance has caused people to stifle their individuality because they're under awareness of being surveyed all the time. So people start to think, act, and become the same rather than being individual. And Foucault called this dynamic normalization. And he stated that dynamic normalization alters free will, and over time you lose the instinct to think for yourself, you lose the instinct to behave spontaneously and develop original ideas. Foucault was one of the most influential, thinkers of his time. And to expand on his point, I want to look at dynamic normalization and panopticism, how it applies to today, and how it applies to me and my lens and my experience as a Black athlete through the concept of media training. So media training, right? In my opinion, media and/or social media is a form of a panopticon. It's a watchtower. This is where my experience as an athlete, growing up, stood out. Athletes are taught to act and engage in a certain way through media training, and there's a societal pushback or a risk of loss of endorsement, if not. And ever since I was about in the 7th grade, at every youth camp that I've ever been to, we've had media training protocols. And in those protocols, we will have examples of who we were supposed to imitate. And often those examples were quote unquote safe. They were never controversial, outspoken. They were never, political whatsoever. And the athletes we remember and admire the most were the exact opposite of that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali. Why weren't they ever the examples for us through this media training protocols? They weren't, especially through grassroots sports. And Foucault explains this. This is what he refers to as the dynamic normalization. Everybody is taught to be the same. And sometimes when I hear media training, when I hear media training, I hear conformity in a sense. I hear cultural hegemony. I hear dynamic normalization. Even when I was an athlete here at Cal, I used to find myself the need to fit in and the fear to be pushed back. I used to find myself using academic words using big words to sound more academic, or to change the tone of your voice a little bit in your post-game interviews to sound a little bit more profound. This is what media training has institutionalized in me over time, and if you pay attention, you still see athletes do this today. Like, instead of being themselves and being more cultural, they're taught to be opposite, a little bit less cultural, in order to get ahead and be successful. But don't get me wrong, I think it's extremely important to be thoughtful and use your platform in a way that you can, make a change in your community. I think that being an athlete is not about the lifestyle, the cars, or the clothes, etc. I think more athletes should leverage their celebrity to be involved in the community of their choice. Sport, art, culture are some of the most influential podiums on the planet. And just because you reach success in those endeavors doesn't mean the trade-off should be less cultural. The trade-off should be, I have to cut my hair, change my voice, or be less of who I am. And a lot of people feel like that. That's the game that they're taught to play growing up. And I got to a point where, I mean, these panopticons exist in everyday life, in education, in politics, in media, social media, in sport. And I thought it would be better. Some of you are probably thinking of some right now. I thought it would be better to share my experience as an athlete, because maybe it would resonate more. But in reality, it's more applicable in more ways than one. And I got to a point where I realized that I was making people feel a little bit more comfortable than I needed to be. I'm unapologetically black in every fabric and every essence, and I promised myself that I wouldn't compensate my values. I shouldn't have to compensate my values, my ethics, my culture in order to make other people feel a little bit more secure. So many things have been institutionalized to strip the essence and the fabric of who people are, especially people of color, dating back in education and in modern society, dating back to when they used to send indigenous people and natives to conversion schools to remove culture, to strip, to take away their religion, to cut their hair, and to redirect their youth. And this is an old version of panopticons that existed, and the foundation still remains to this day. Like, okay, Jaylen, like, I hear you talking about panopticism and dynamic normalization and all this stuff. We get it, but how do we break it? Like, this is something that's been here and is gonna be here for a long period of time. I would argue that it's already breaking. The first step is to be aware, and you guys have achieved that, most of you. To be aware that something exists, to be unaware that something exists will allow you to do little to nothing to change it. And I think the second step is to push the envelope. And what that looks like is things have changed a lot post-COVID. Establishments have changed forms, et cetera. And so continue to push the envelope, because how things looked 10 years ago is different from how they look now. Are there any science majors in the house? Great. So, okay, science majors know that hydrogen is in everything. Hydrogen is an element of life. When they finally confirmed that there was life on Mars, it's because there was hydrogen particles found in the soil, right? And for hydrogen bonds to change forms, they must break those bonds. And how you do that, one of those adhesives is heat and pressure. And keep that in mind, that activism is the heat and the pressure, and these bonds need to be broken. The physical bonds might have broken through slavery, but those psychological bonds are still there, and that fight has continued. And people would much rather me keep the same form that they know me in as being an athlete, but they don't know me very well because I refuse to shut up and dribble. And shut up and dribble is a concept that's gained attention recently, but I really think it's the viewpoint of America, right? Athletes and people of color are not allowed to have contributions to society. They're taught to go home, do their job, entertain us, play basketball, and go home. That's all you get to do. And that's been the notion for far too long. When I entered the draft, I didn't hire an agent. I had an advisory team, and I used the Players Association. And I think this rubbed people the wrong way because it was a breaking of a panopticon. People were it made one person so mad, possibly he chose not to draft me because he said that I was too smart to be in the NBA. To this day, I don't know what that means. But if you pay attention, things are changing right in front of us, like I said before. Society, post-COVID, social temperature, and those bonds, those hydrogen bonds are breaking. Panopticism is shifting. If we continue to add pressure, we can continue to push forward. And you can use athletes as an example of how things are possibly changing. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or even maybe 7 years ago, I don't think it was common to see athletes who are musicians, politicians, on stage speaking now, who are VCs, and the list goes on. Now, I think it's a much more comfortable climate for athletes and people to do things like that. So that's just a small example of how panopticism is changing and how dynamic normalization is changing, because they are trying to keep everybody in the same model. And an idea that I learned at MIT to kind of conceptualize the breaking of Panopticism and dynamic normalization is dinosaurs and frogs. Jaylen, what are you talking about, dinosaurs and frogs? The dinosaur and the frog existed during the same period of time, right? The dinosaur is extinct. The frog is smaller, versatile, takes up less space, and is still alive to this day. Dinosaurs represent prehistoric social norms, social constructs, and ideas such as like, I gotta go to college to be successful. I need to wear a suit to look professional. Or if you're a woman, I need to stay at home and work. And I need to stay at home and raise the kids and I don't need to work. These are old prehistoric social norms that a lot of people still believe, but have changed a lot over time. The frog represents progressiveness, where in reality, you don't have to go to college to be successful. Excuse me, teachers. People are pressing a button on a computer and being successful through social media, through playing video games. In reality, you don't have to wear a suit to look professional. I don't have a suit on right now. And people have red, blue, yellow, and green hair and are just as qualified. And the dinosaur is extinct. The frog is progressiveness and learn to evolve with the times. So which one are you? We need to continue to push the envelope. We need to continue to break those hydrogen bonds that exist by adding heat and pressure, which is activism. So Berkeley is like the home of that. Keep that up, guys. And I appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you.
And with that, we would like to transition to our one-on-one moderated portion with Mr. Jaylen Brown and our student moderator and forum president, Omatara Oloye.
It's on. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for that amazing talk. There was so much there that I feel like I can really pull from, but I like the fact that you started by talking about a story that you found that was really personal to you and helped change your trajectory of your college career by making a decision on what school to choose. And I guess moving from Georgia to California, that is a really big transition. And you, in previous talks, you've characterized Berkeley as slow-paced and mellow, compared to what you were used to in Atlanta, and we just want to know what was that transition like?
That transition was unique. Like I said, I traveled a long way. It was very unorthodox for somebody in my position. At the time, I was a top 5 player, coming from Georgia to a school like Berkeley. Half my family didn't even know Berkeley had a basketball team. It's the truth. They'll tell you they're sitting right here. They didn't even know Berkeley had a basketball team. And when I got here, to be honest, my basketball experience wasn't that great, to be honest. But everything the school and the university offered, man, it was refreshing just to learn. I always like learning because my family is big on education, but Berkeley just broke that box for me. I had some mentors help me find some really dope classes, and the transition was smooth. It was completely polar opposite of where I'm from, but sometimes opposites attract, so that experience for me being here in Berkeley was like I said, where my spirit aligned.
And you also mentioned being able to, or in your intro, being able to take a lot of upper division classes and graduate level classes. But in another previous talk, you mentioned how you were initially placed in safe classes, despite your intent on obtaining a quality education at Berkeley. And you pushed back against that sort of status quo and took those classes that you were interested in. How, if at all, has that decision informed how people view you as an athlete?
I don't want to throw Berkeley under the bus, but I was tight. They put me, they gave me like the weakest class schedule I've ever seen in my life. And I came here, it was like offensive because I didn't come here to play basketball. Like, to be honest, like I told you, my family didn't even know they had a basketball team. I mean, of course I was gonna play basketball, but like I had other things in mind as well. So when like I was trying to take these classes and I was getting pushed back, I didn't understand. It really was upsetting me and frustrated me a lot. But I met some amazing people. Some are here today that helped me get in the right classes and take some of the things that I love to do. But you know, at first it was very difficult because I was getting a lot of pushback from the athletic department for sure. Of course, they wanted me to be eligible. Berkeley's not an easy university, so they were fighting me on the classes that I wanted to take. And I was like, bruh, I didn't come here for that. Like, let's keep it a buck. Y'all know I didn't come here to play basketball. Y'all better let me take these classes and go about my business.
Definitely. And you mentioned having mentors and interactions with professors. How have they informed your activism?
Extremely. And rest in peace to Professor Fry. I took student activism here at Cal Berkeley, and Professor Fry was my teacher. And what we would do all day in this class was just basically compare and contrast different movements from different periods of time with different leaders in different places in the world, and just compare and contrast all day long. What if this movement had this leader? What if this movement took place in America? What if it took place over there? And it just opens your mind. And then like the final project was like we had to come up with our own movement and get like a group and come up with our own movement. And stuff like that was just for a classroom setting, but like it applied so much to my actual life. Like during, you know, when George Floyd passed away, like it was my first time leading a protest, like on my own. A lot of the things that I learned, or a lot of the things that I went back to, is stuff that I learned from Professor Fly's class. So rest in peace to him.
Definitely. Thank you for that story. I feel like it's really important, the professors that we're able to learn from and the things that we're able to take from them. And I'm really glad that you were able to engage in that class and engage with what seems like a truly amazing person. And just continuing on this idea of education at large, you've used your platform as a public figure to draw attention to inequities in the education system. Why are you drawn to education reform specifically?
I think education is the most potent form of racism in our country. I think racism, people still think it's like somebody coming up to you and telling you that they don't like you because of the way you look, the way you walk, the way you talk. I don't really mind those. You know, it's racism, or stereotype, but that doesn't really bother me. It's when, like, I'm not allowed to go to university, or I'm not allowed to get a job, or you deny me if I try to get a loan or get a house. Racism is more of a power dynamic, and education is one of the ways where it's signatured, where standardized testing, hidden curriculum, especially in public school, when the superintendents and government officials are assigning these curriculums to public schools, they know exactly what they're doing. The curriculums in public schools are totally different from curriculums if you go to a private school. And most people will be like, they have this feeling when they went through school, it's like, why am I in school? Everything that I'm learning has no application to the real world. I feel like I'm wasting my time. There's probably a lot of people in here that probably said that to themselves. When I learned that feeling wasn't a coincidence, they wanted you to feel like that because they wanted you to end up in a certain place. It was all by design. Man, that hit me hard. And I thought that more people should know. And so that's why I kind of wanted to use my platform to make sure as many people as possible know what's going on, that racism has shifted forms. It's not to your face, it's institutionalized in education and everything else. And I think education is the most modern form of racism, or the most potent form of racism to date.
When people talk about education, they also bring up the school-to-prison pipeline, and that's something that you also talked about, that dichotomy of the police officer having the opportunity to take you to school, but instead making the decision to take you to a holding cell. When we talk about the school-to-prison pipeline, when we talk about the way that education has manifested itself today, do you think that there are any remedies or policies that could be put in place in order to sort of rectify those past atrocities and the way that we see it play out today?
Do I think, what's the question again?
Do you think that there are any policies or initiatives that you think can help rectify any of these things?
I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a policy instructor. I feel like I try to just play my role in the part, and that's using my platform to bring awareness to a lot of these things. Like, if I said I had a policy that I designed that would be better, more fit, I wouldn't be telling the truth. I think that just using my platform to inspire activism and to continue to put pressure on people, because if nobody feels like anybody cares, they're going to continue to do things that are shaping young people's minds, and nobody's going to ever know about it. But I'm going to use my platform because people happen to listen to NBA players. So I'm going to use my platform, and hopefully somebody in this room got a policy that they can implement.
Thank you, thank you. Everyone out there, you heard it. Definitely, and you talked about being able to use your platform, and you recently had a talk at Harvard where you mentioned that the media expresses racial undertones when describing white and black athletes, choosing to use words like intellectual versus beast. How, if at all, do you see this contract affect athletes both on and off the court?
You still kind of see it today, and it's just an undertone of, I feel like racism and hegemony, how they describe a black athlete versus how they describe a white one. You see the dichotomy in the words they use sometimes bothers me because they still do it today. If they're describing, a white player, they might say he's extremely intelligent, he's, has such a feel for the game, he's so thoughtful. But if you're talking about LeBron James, he's just a beast. He's just a man boy, or he's just like, his mind isn't just as strong. Like, if he's not a basketball genius or not. So, sometimes the verbiage I notice and I call people out for it. But, those are things that I think are deeply embedded in people's psyche. So sometimes people might not even know what they're doing, and they do it. So that's what I say.
In your talk, you mentioned the shut up and dribble comment, and that was definitely heard around the world and was met with mixed reactions. And against some critics' comments that athletes and activism should not intertwine, the NBA made social justice and the Black Lives Matter movement central to its restart in the bubble. How, if at all, did your experience during that time affect your perspective on activism in the NBA?
What, during the bubble? What, during what?
During the bubble.
Yeah, the bubble really refers, and I was talking to one of my mentors about this, the bubble, everything I just talked about, the bubble was exactly that, but hyper-focused. Like, when you talk about, like, the Panopticon Design, that Jeremy Bentham, like, that was literally, like, kind of in a sense a direct correlation. Like, we were in a legit bubble, and it kind of felt exactly what I was talking about. We had trackers and things like that, and that was kind of like the watchtower. Like, if we were to leave and go off campus or something like that, take one step off campus and like somebody was gonna know. And it was like, almost like, I don't want to say it felt like that, because I don't want to undermine like what actual people in the prison industrial complex are going through and feel like, but like, it's the closest thing that I think that I can imagine. And the experience there, for me was rough, personally, because I love basketball, but I love other things too, and I felt like I was just trapped. I feel like the room was kind of getting smaller every day, and I kept seeing the same people over and over. Like, I enjoy basketball, but sometimes I need a break from it. Like, I love it, but I love it for different reasons. So for me, it was not a comfortable space at Me for All, but what kept me going is that the platform I was using was bigger than me. It wasn't about me whatsoever, how comfortable or uncomfortable I was. I spend a lot of my time on the phone with some of the people here today. I spend a lot of my time doing research because I was using my post-game interviews to try to, in a sense, make people aware of what's going on or inform people on things that I've done research on, or just my opinion in general. So the bubble was an experience not good so far for me, but I looked at it. It wasn't about me.
The NBA bubble brought up players' mental health to the spotlight, and you sort of talked about that psychological surveillance and just seeing the same people over and over again. And recently, conversations around athletes' mental health have also come to the forefront, most recently with Simone Biles' withdrawal from Olympic events being met with, again, mixed public reception. In your experience, how have the mental health concerns of NBA athletes been received by the public and the association?
Mental health is real, and I've spoken about this publicly, having anxiety and or depression at certain periods of my athletic career. Sometimes we walk into these spaces, and they're not spaces that are designed for, people of color sometimes, and for me, it takes so much energy to walk in, at times to work every day and deal with people on that level. And a lot of people describe me as stoic. Like they say, he never smiles, he's super intense, and he just got a straight face all the time. But people who know me best know I'm like the goofiest person that you'll ever meet. But I have to, because that, sometimes walking into these spaces as a young black man and see how, politics are playing out, see how they're trying to, use your mind to make you feel a certain way. They play mind games that exist. They try to make you break your confidence or break your spirit, and not directly, but kind of like, break your confidence. Sometimes it's so draining, in the sense to deal with that. And I don't think it gets talked about enough. And I can understand. And then the media, especially in certain places, I understand the importance of the media, so I'm not taking a shot at them. But sometimes, the articles that are being written, there's no credibility to it whatsoever. You're talking about people's well-being, you're talking about their character, talking about who they are as a person, and nobody's combating that. You writing your opinions as if they're facts, and you have a following, and you're doing it to make money and sell stories, but you have no idea the amount of negative impact your opinion is having on somebody's family, especially if you made it up. I think people should differentiate opinions from facts. Like, in my opinion, I think that this is the case, rather than writing an article saying that this is the case. And I think that's a subtle difference that in the media they lose. And I think I would like to see if there's any journalist majors, as they progress through school, continue to keep your credibility, keep your values intact. I know it's a lot of pressure from society to come up with things and to be different and to reach a level of success, but you can do it and be authentic and have morals at the same time, rather than trying to spin stories, rather than trying to do clickbait and things like that. And this time it's so sensationalized, and I don't really say much outside of when I talk, because I feel like people are embedded or invested on breaking down and finding the story in whatever you're trying to say, and taking things out of context. And nobody, once they released it and somebody reaches out, they don't release an apology article. They don't release something that says, you know what, you're right, you know what I mean, or I apologize, I was wrong. They just have all these narratives out there, and there's nothing to combat it. So I think mental health is important. I understand what these athletes are going through. I understand because it's draining, extremely. Draining. It takes a lot of energy to deal. It's not even just about basketball or sports anymore. It's so much that comes with it these days. The idea of who you're supposed to be in front of the camera, how to handle yourself and talk to the media, how to use your platform, et cetera, while people are trying to break you down, make memes, and do things, and constantly saying hurtful and harmful things. It's tough for a lot of people. You got to be very strong-minded. Me, I can care less what a lot of people think, but some people are more emotional, than others. And I don't fault them for that because we're human. So if somebody were to say something that, attacked my character or something that was untrue, like, if I didn't care so much, because I'm like extremely laid back, if I didn't care so much, I'll be in the right mind to be like, to fire back at somebody or to respond. Like, but I don't because, I might this year, we'll see.
Definitely, thank you. I think it's really important, conversations around mental health. There have also been conversations around mental health being just as important as physical health. So I think it's really important, and we thank you for shedding light on that issue. Switching gears a bit, I want to talk about the NCAA. And I know that is an organization and association where people have, again, I think the word of the day is mixed reactions. But in June this year, the NCAA updated their policies to allow college students to profit off of endorsements, merchandise, and social media. How, if at all, do you believe that the NCAA can further support student athletes?
The NCAA can further support? I don't know. It's a lot that needs to go into speaking about that. You can't just talk about the NCAA. What I will talk about is that I think that athletes being able to get paid on name, image, and likeness is about time. I think that a lot of times athletes, not at Cal necessarily, but at other universities, especially over time, have gone through 4-year programs or 5-year programs, sometimes 6, and spent all of this time and effort and sweat equity into a university and have little to nothing to show for it. They got a degree that doesn't even apply to jobs, and they can't even get one because the job market is dry right now. So I just gave my heart and soul, my time to this university, and what do I have to show for it? The least you can do is allow me to go be able to make some money, get a job if I wanted to, or if somebody wanted to sponsor me or endorse me. That's the least you should be able to do. I think it was silly here when, me playing basketball, like, I'm not allowed to do this, I'm not allowed to do that, and I'm not allowed to do this. And I'm like, man, like, I should have just stayed in high school. Like, I had more, freedom when I was there than I did when the NCAA, got here. So I definitely think that name, image, and likeness is important. And just the sound of that name, image, and likeness is just important to digest in itself.
Definitely, especially with the points that you brought up in your talk about individuality. Do you feel like the NCAA has any work to do around letting players have their own individual likeness when they come to the university?
Like I said, I think so. I think individuality is important, but I also like the idea of group licensing. I talked to Jim Knowles about that today, athletic director, and Tyrone. And I think that group licensing is something that should be explored, but the rules are up in the air right now, and we'll see what comes of it.
Definitely. Those were my NCAA questions, so I'll move into just sports at large. Again, around inequities, you've talked about how different income classes are drawn to certain sports, largely due to the disparate amount of resources that these sports require. What implications, if any, does this have on the field of professional sports and your own experience as a professional athlete?
I'm sorry, repeat that question one more time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I stumbled. But you talked about different income classes and how we see almost a direct correlation to the sports that people from those classes are able to participate in. What implications, if any, do you think that this has on the field of professional sports, more specifically yourself as a professional athlete?
Yeah, I think it's a direct correlation between representation, and that's why you see some, like the NBA and the NFL are just happen to be in Major League Baseball are the highest paid sports in America, and they're predominantly African American, and I think representation has a big thing to do with that, like being able to see somebody that looks like you on television. I think is important. I think And based on circumstances, you know, if they want to make it out, we don't see a lot of representation in certain neighborhoods. There wasn't a lot of black doctors or professors or anything that came to my high school. But I can always turn on the TV and see LeBron James, and I can always turn on the TV and see Kobe Bryant. So it makes people want to be like them, you know, and I think that has a direct correlation between why the NBA is predominantly African American, because you see and you believe. I see this representation of people who look like me. I see how cool NBA players look and this and that. I'm gonna try to be exactly that. And my mom, she's hungry, or my sister, or da-da-da-da-da, so I gotta grind to get through these circumstances, so I'm gonna work really hard at it, and it becomes like a distraction, an outlet for aggressive energy, rather than, you know, potentially doing things that might be not above the law. I'm gonna channel that energy within sports, and you see a lot of athletes who have done that, who came from those stories, and they're in the NBA now, and it's because of the circumstances they were in, and it's because of, I think, the representation, and I think that's why you look around in professional sports and you see that it's predominantly African American, not because what the media tell you is that we just animalistic or whatever the case may be. It's because, you know, these are our conditions, and this was a way out. So that's what I believe. That's my opinion.
With that, do you ever feel the burden of representation?
Yeah, and it's not a burden, no. It's a responsibility. And like I said, I understand that people want to be themselves, but at the same time, I don't understand. Like, I feel like there should be a culture about having influence, and people should be thoughtful in their approach. Everybody's not Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, or I understand and get that, but you should definitely have a sense of community and stuff as you are maneuvering through influence. You shouldn't be out here just doing whatever, and I firmly believe that. So I don't look at it as a burden at all. I think it's a responsibility. I think, you know, I have so many people who look up to me, and I understand that, whether it's my community in Atlanta, the younger generation there, or my community here in Berkeley, the younger generation, or community in Boston and the younger people there, and really all over the world now. Like, it'll be selfish of me to dismiss those people, right? Like, people that I looked up to and role modeled after helped me get to where I'm at. Why wouldn't I be a beacon for other people so they can take it farther than I did? I don't really understand people who dismiss social responsibility. That's just me. But it's not a burden, and I don't look at them differently. But, I mean, that doesn't make sense in my mind.
And with those experiences, as well as your experiences growing up in Atlanta, coming to Cal, and now being an NBA player, how do they possibly, if any, affect your the way that you operate as a VP in the NBA Players Association?
It doesn't affect at all. You know, I try to be myself as much as possible, but I keep in mind, of course, that, you know, all of the people that are counting on me and leaning on me. So it doesn't affect me at all. It's not a burden. Like I said, I look at it as a privilege and a great opportunity to make a difference.
Thank you. We have a couple questions left. We're really proud to have this event be sponsored by the Cal Black Student Union, and they have a request for a question. And it's, how has playing in the NBA shaped your political ideology?
How has playing in the NBA shaped my political? That's a good question. It's probably made me hate it. To be honest, politics is something that is extremely frustrating and is extremely difficult. It's something that everybody thinks that that's my next, but politics is dirty, man. It takes the fun out of a lot of things, but I'm not sure. I'm still 24, so I got a long way to go, but for now, I would say, man, politics is a lot. and we'll see.
Definitely. You also mentioned in your speech how one person had remarked that you were too smart for the NBA during your 2016 draft. And you talked about other experiences of not having an agent and using the Players Association. What, if any, were your reactions to this comment? And how does it, again, affect your work as the VP of the NBA Players Association, if at all?
To be honest, I don't really have a response or a reaction towards that. And using the Players Association and advisory team worked out for me great. I didn't really have somebody who held my hand. When I entered the NBA, I learned a lot of stuff on my own. And sometimes learning things on your own, there's a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, but at least you got stories to tell. So I learned a lot of things, but through trial and error. And I like that approach versus possibly having an agent, which is like somebody who kind of holds your hand and walks you through everything, which I don't look negatively at agents. Some people need that. It was just for me, I didn't need that at the time. So I chose to just put together an advisory team, and I used the Players Association, the union, and things worked out.
They definitely worked out. For the sake of time, this is going to be my last question before we move on to questions from the audience. Like you said, you're 24, and we all know you have a long, star-studded career ahead of you that we're very excited to watch. But some NBA players have returned to higher education after retiring from the NBA, such as Pistons superstar Isaiah Thomas. Do you have any similar plans to potentially return to higher education after your NBA career?
Yeah, of course. I don't think my mom would let me not do that. So I don't think I got a choice, to be honest.
Definitely. Thank you so much for answering all of my questions. We're now going to move on to audience questions. If you have something that you'd like to ask Jaylen Brown, please find your way now, orderly, in a fashion, to the microphone located to the right of the stage right here. We will try and take as many questions as we can. Please keep your questions brief, and please remember to speak up. Thank you.
Testing.
We'll start with the first question.
Hi, my name is Sam, and it's an honor to meet you, Jaylen Brown. I'm also from Massachusetts, so it's really a big deal for me. But I just had a question regarding your perspective on the media and as it being a panopticon. Do you think the media can be itself just like how you're using your platform to kind of shatter these panopticons? Do you think the media can be shifted and their role can be shifted towards, instead of being the panopticon, breaking down panopticons, and how do you think that shift would happen, if you think that's a possibility?
Definitely. I think the media it gives a platform to do a lot of amazing things. So let's not forget that. I mean, people look at, I'm using it in my sense, in my lens, as a version of a panopticon, but social media and/or media has been responsible for a lot of great things, a lot of things social justice-wise go unnoticed, especially in the past. There's been police brutality going on for years, and social media and the media gave awareness to those things, and through, even to this day, through social media and media, et cetera, people are using their platforms to go after these establishments who invest in prisons and things like that. So I definitely think the media can be used as a tool. In my lens as a black athlete, especially maneuvering through media training, this is what they kind of institutionalized in us as we were coming up. Right. Since I was about in 7th grade, people have been showing me examples and trying to tell me this is how I'm supposed to act. I'm supposed to wear a suit to be professional. I need to talk this way, in a sense. I need to act like this person. And I had a problem with that. I needed to be more of myself. Why are these people examples? Why aren't Muhammad Ali, Kareem, Juan Thayer examples and stuff like that? So to answer your question, I think in terms of media training, I look at that in my lens, in my personal lens as a form of a panopticon, but I think for a lot of people, they can use media and or social media to increase their activism and to utilize their platform. So I don't think the media is just all bad, but I was just giving a reference to my lens.
Just to follow up to that question, if that's okay, do you think the media, if it's not incentivized by like clickbaity like articles or just like clicks or views, do you think it can play a role in empowering individuals like yourself, or just like individuals in general? Like, do you think the media can play a role in that?
Absolutely. I wish Professor Fry was here, because would be a great question for him to answer. He was like, one of the things we would talk about like is the civil rights movement, and like what if the civil rights movement had social media, and what would that look like? And we don't know, of course, what that would look like, but a lot of people think, man, it would have been a lot bigger than what it is. So I definitely think media and social media could be used as a powerful tool. It just depends on who's using it.
Thank you so much.
So first of all, I want to say thank you for being here today. And I also want to affirm that Professor Fry is here because his spirit lives in you. And I just wanted to make that first step. My name is Nia. You're welcome. My name is Nia Jones. I'm currently getting my master's degree in energy and resources. And I have a question about the JUICE Foundation, since JUICE means energy. I'm curious to know if there's any educational programming targeted at sustainability for the children to be involved in the sustainability and just transition movement. Yeah,
sustainability is like the next thing that I want to start to approach in terms of sustainable technology and clothing and recycling, et cetera. I definitely want to incorporate that. I have a program right now, and we're talking about ways to add a sustainability into the approach, because like you said, JUICE is energy, and sustainable energy is like cutting edge, and I think that's environment friendly, and I think that more and more people should do that. So starting to switch to solar panels and things like that, starting to look for electric powered vehicles and stuff like that. I'm making a transition now to start living that lifestyle. But I have a program at MIT. Currently, right now, we're 7 weeks in, and we talk about technology because it's a STEM-based program: science, technology, engineering, and math. And sustainability was one of the topics, and the kids are really excited about it. We're doing a field trip, actually, to a energy conservation in the next few weeks, and so they can learn all about sustainable energy and be what's a part of like what's going forward. So I'm looking forward. That's a great question. I'm looking forward to being more sustainable over time.
Yeah, and if I can just follow up, I actually used to be a part of the Boston Celtics. I was on the green team in the 2019-2020 season. So I'm really just thrilled to be here at Berkeley studying my master's and for you to be here. And this is a real amazing experience, and I really value everything that you said. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to please keep your questions brief.
Hi. My name is Barry, and I was just wondering, like, you do so much beyond basketball, like with activism and everything else. So who are like some of your like non-athlete role models growing up?
There's a lot. I would say some of my non-athlete role models. Benjamin Banneker, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, of course. Those are a few, as well as Harriet Tubman. It's a lot, like I can name. It depends on the day you ask me, but I have a lot of influential people that, my mom. There's a lot of people in my life that I draw inspiration from.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nolan the Frog Kim, because you reminded me to stay a frog and stay passionate about pushing.
I like it.
Yeah.
One more time.
So I gave your mom a book about sustainability, so you better read that.
Got you.
But more than that, my question for you is, my dad's name is Hope, so that's the biggest word in the world to me. So What gives you hope to be the best version of Jaylen Brown you can be every single day?
The youth, the ability to shape minds, and for people to take things farther in the next generation. There's been certain people who made sacrifices for the world to get to where it is now in terms of equality, etc. And we still have a lot of work to do. So I look at myself as one of those people who needs to make sacrifices in order to make the next generation hopeful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a little side note, in the book it says that you have to take that to the president in 2036. Won't you bring him that chip when you beat my Lakers? So just know that 86 on 2K, I don't know if you're happy about that, so keep being the best version of yourself.
That's going to be hard to follow up, but I'd like to first say thank you for your time. So you talked a lot about the benefits of having a platform and things like responsibility and advocacy. Could you maybe talk, if there's any negative aspects of being such a big role model and having such a big platform?
Personal life. There's no privacy. It's very hard to find privacy, and that's the line that you walk in. You gotta act a certain way all the time because of who you represent and who is looking up to you. And you want to make sure that people get the right idea and image, because people like to sell controversy and like to sell negativity. So walking the line of making the right decisions all the time, and personal decisions. Sometimes you're not allowed to just be 24. Right. You know what I mean? Because everything that you represent, with one mistake, they'll try to take everything away from you. So I think that is the hardest thing for me.
Thank you for that insight.
Thank you.
Hi, so...
You can keep your mask on.
Oh, sorry about that. So my question was, you were speaking earlier that you hope to be an inspiration for people in the room to come up with policies that would better the country later on. But for policies right now that are out there, such as eliminating student debt or Medicare for all, that would help marginalized communities and communities of color, help lift them up and give them resources to be successful. Would you ever consider publicly supporting that or campaigning for policies like that?
For sure. You got something for me?
Well, just Medicare for all, eliminating student debt, things like that that are really in the political headlines right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% am and will and plan to.
Great.
Thank
so
you.
can we expect to see that on social media or your Twitter or something like that? Because I think that would really help communities of color.
Please be brief.
Hey, Jaylen. My name's Anish. I'm from Duluth, Georgia, not too far from Marietta in the 678. You said earlier that education is the most potent form of racism today. The NYUs, the Harvards, oftentimes they pride themselves on how many applicants they reject. And the media picks up on this by using this metric in their college rankings every year. Mm-hmm. So, Berkeley, UCLA, they provide Pell Grants, one of the highest rates of Pell Grants to students, thank you, compared to other universities. So my question is, how can we help in changing this narrative? How can you and I help in changing this narrative of priding school, or looking at exemplifying schools based on their eliteness, but to more of how they're helping students as a whole?
Yeah, I had a conversation the other day. I'm not sure how college rankings are, gerrymandered. From what I've heard, it's that it's more about, who's teaching at the university, how nice the campus is, the living situations. It's less about the actual content of the university, because I've spent time at a lot of the places that you just named, and in terms of students and knowledge, Berkeley is blowing a lot of places out of the water. So I don't understand, how the rankings are being kept up, but what I've heard is that it has little to do with nothing of the content of what's actually being, driven or pushed through the university. Is all about the optics.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Thanks again, and thanks for making the 678 proud.
My man.
My name is Naziah Nesbitt. I'm a rhetoric major, so I'm so glad you brought up Michael Foucault, because that's a small major on this university, and he is big in the idea of normalization, normalizing dominant ideology, which happens to be racist. So I come to you as a brother right now, I know exactly what you're feeling like. I want you to keep on going. Thank you. And I want to know, my question, will you take this hoodie from me? I got a brand. It's called Bread Eyes. It's a Jamaican clothing brand. It means brothers in Jamaican patois.
For sure.
How you doing? My name's Josh. I just want to thank you for coming out here. Really appreciate it. Part of your speech that really resonated with me, and I think a lot of people in the audience, was, from a very young age, like people getting put into a box and, sort of expected to act a certain way. And obviously you were very good at basketball from a very young age. So like, at what point did you kind of realize you were Jaylen Brown and not just a really good basketball player?
That's a great question. I think it's when I cut my hair. Because I literally had like a box. You get it?
Yeah.
But I mentioned for a long time is I was trying to make other people feel more comfortable when I needed to. When I decided to cut my hair is like when I made that promise that I'm gonna just be myself, and no matter if it goes up, down, left or right, I can look in the mirror and I can live with that. And ever since then, things have been going fantastic. So I think when I cut my hair is when I made that decision, like, and I reminded myself, like this is me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Jaylen. First of all, thanks so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. My name is Amir, and I'm currently a sophomore at Berkeley. First thing I wanted to say is love the hoodie. Navy and gold looks good on you, but I think blue and gold looks a little bit better. So if you ever want to put up a Warriors jersey, we're going to welcome you with open arms. But no tampering. Tampering aside, what I wanted to ask is, you mentioned during the bubble, it wasn't the best experience for players, but I think, at least for us, outside of the bubble, I think it was unique in that we got a personal insight through the eyes of players like JaVale McGee and Matisse Thybulle of what the NBA really looked like. And whether it be LeBron and Taco Tuesday, or more serious conversations like how players can support the Black Lives Matters movement. I think it was really cool to get that insight from the perspective of not an NBA player and what that really looks like behind closed doors. So what I wanted to ask you is, when you're in the locker room with your teammates or when you're on those buses, what types of conversations do you have on a daily basis?
Man, it could be anything under the sun. Like, we got a bunch of different type of guys, so the conversations vary so much. So it depending on the day, what's going on. A lot of times it's about current news, of course, but we talk about everything from politics to like what we doing tonight. Like, like it could go anywhere in between that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Jaylen. Thanks so much. My name is Martin. You talked a lot about institutional racism in society, and I kind of wanted to shift the focus a little bit to the Celtics organization. So kind of during your time there, a lot of the top-level executives have all been white. Danny Ainge, Brad Stevens, Mike Zarin. What have been some of your struggles getting them to empathize and recognize your position as an African-American athlete? And what are you excited about with your new coach, Ime Udoka?
There's been a lot of conversations that have taken place. And there's been a lot of, I would say, there's been a lot of growth from the people you just named. Still, they would say it's still a long way to go. But I'm excited about Ime. I'm excited about him, to play for him. I've got the chance to play for him at Team USA. So Ime got my full respect. I'm excited. And I think that we have a chance to do some big things this year. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sweet. Thank you. And good luck this year.
How's it going, Jaylen? I just want to ask you, what kind of personal conversations can you have with NBA executives, NBA owners, your NBA peers, the people that have capital to fund programs and fund organizations to really create activism, and what level of responsibility do you find for that?
For myself, it's an extreme responsibility. For others, the mindset is people tend not to care. They tend to only care about themselves. And I think when people started caring is when it became like a trend or a cool thing to do. Like after George Floyd, you know, the protests and he passed away, rest in peace, is when a lot of people started to, you know, post things on social media or do things to seem as if they're, you know, they care. And where are those people now? You know, why isn't that being maintained? Like, activism isn't a trend, or, you know, believing in equality isn't a trend, it's a lifestyle. And people, you know, it's a lifestyle that's not attainable from some, and that's okay, but I don't like when people pretend as if that just because it's the right thing to say, like they say it, but in reality they don't believe what they're saying.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Hey Jaylen, thank you so much for your time. I'm Matthew. This is going to be my last year as an undergraduate. So something that you touched upon that I want to ask you about is that you mentioned that during your year here, the late professor's mentorship was very helpful for you, for your learning, as well as setting up your mindset for the rest of your life. What methods do you use to continue learning now that you're out of this environment? And how would you recommend that we use resources to continue educating ourselves once we're graduated?
I think life is the best teacher. I mean, through experience, you learn the most. So even when you're not in school, you're learning. That's something as humans we're gonna always continue to do. I think learning is just, you know, circumvented to just on a school campus, and that's not true. You know, I've learned so much when I was here at university, and I've learned so much just by living and experiencing in life. Whether that's being in certain rooms, meeting certain people, having certain friends, you continue to learn and continue to challenge yourself in certain ways. Learning is interdimensional. Everything is connected rather than separate. So as you explore and as you maneuver through life, you're gonna learn, especially if you keep an open mind.
Thank you so much.
What's up, Jaylen? I'm Sahej, a student at UC Berkeley. And my question is that you have a lot of interests outside of basketball, obviously. From, you know, you talk about activism, philosophy, and even I was reading your Wikipedia page just now, and you apparently watch anime, I think.
For sure.
Does that somehow affect your basketball game or how you train? Not specifically anime, but just your interests outside of basketball. Does that ever reflect in your game?
For sure. Watching Seven Deadly Sins definitely had a huge impact on my basketball career, and Avatar: The Last Airbender as well. For sure. It's why I am who I am. I'm just...
Okay, that's pretty cool. Is that the answer?
Yeah.
What's up, Jaylen? My name is Connor. I'm a longtime Celtics fan. And I was just wondering if you had any keys to success just for a bunch of young college students like us, and if you could share that with us.
Say it one more time, I'm sorry.
If you had any key things for, that help you have success, like key phrases, advice.
Sure. One thing that somebody told me that's been the best piece of advice that I've had since, you know, I left Cal was keep your confidence. You're gonna need it. Don't let somebody break your spirit. Don't let somebody tell you who you are, or try to, you know, tell you what you can and can't do. A lot of times people get, you know, insecure about, you know, who you are, so they try to portray and put things and project things onto you. But for me, continue to have confidence. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. I think people try to associate those two together, but just because I say I believe in myself doesn't mean I'm putting myself above anybody or below anybody. I believe in me. you know, and I think that should be normalized. I think when you come to college, even through sports, they try to tell you like you need to be humble and you don't need to have so much confidence. And why are you walking through with so much swag? Like, who do you think you are? Like, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? I think confidence is the key to success. So as y'all maneuver and go through school, university, be authentically you. Have as much confidence as you can possibly have, because I think confidence is the key to success, 200%. And there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, and the difference is people who are arrogant put themselves above people. Like, I don't think I'm any different than the person that put this microphone on the stage or, you know, may clean this room, or I don't think I'm below him either, you know. So I can have confidence in myself. I can believe in myself. That's perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think sometimes in society, like, people would try to, because I had confidence, they would try to tell me that I was arrogant. And I was like, because I believe in myself. And I guess I'm arrogant then.
Appreciate it, and good luck this season.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Timothy Henry.
Summer Bridge.
Yes, sir. I was just wondering, like, as an individual who's still maturing and growing, when do you think, like, if you look at your life, when do you think you start seeing, like, significant, like, development in your maturity?
Definitely when I got to college, for sure. Around this time, around 18, 19, is when things started to shift for me. One, I challenged myself at university, at school, not just in the classroom, but, you know, the different programs that existed. I remember going to Habitat for Humanity meetings here at Cal, you know, just learning things differently. And even going here, in a sense, was a challenge for me. One, because it was like, you know, it was unpopular or unorthodox for me to go to a university like this. And then on top of that, it was a complete culture shock. Like, I'm from Georgia. Like, I'm from Atlanta. Like, that's other side of the country. How people act over there is totally different from how they act over here. Right. And that pushed me to be more mature. It pushed me to learn things about myself that I didn't learn before, because it was all new to me. So sometimes putting yourself in spaces that are uncomfortable help you to grow. Sometimes changing the people around you help you grow. Sometimes, you know, making certain sacrifices, or, you know, calling people, emailing people, might seem uncomfortable, but it helps you get into different positions in life. Like, when I was here, I interned at a VC firm, and one of the guys, the head of the venture capital firm, is sitting right here. And I remember when I was in college, I emailed him and told him, or I talked to him when he came to one of the games, told him that I wanted to intern. And he was like, man, get out of here. That's what he said to me. Man, get out of here. And then, you know, I came back to him. I think I might have sent him a text message or email. I'm like, man, I'm serious. And most people would feel uncomfortable, you know, doing that or emailing somebody, especially after they dismissed them the first time. But I ended up interning at a VC. I ended up interning at a VC when I was in college, and that challenged me. It pushed me, something I was unfamiliar with. I didn't know a lot about money at the time. And now I feel like I have a better understanding. And because I made myself uncomfortable a little bit. So sometimes with your teachers, with your professors, with people that are around that you want to learn from, sometimes, you know, being persistent gets you farther than you think. You know, sometimes it's embarrassing to do certain things, or it's like something you would shy away from because you don't want to, like, look a certain way. You got to break out of that box, that Panopticon. For me, like, when I started having more success is when I started caring less about how people thought about me, about how people was going to look at me on social media. Like, I could care less. You know what I mean? And most people are constantly critical of how other people view them. And the more I started to shy away from that, not to care how people view me, is the more I reached success. And then more people started to follow what I was doing.
Exactly.
You know, so I think just breaking that Panopticon is that how everybody is trying to be concerned and fit in, and scared to be themselves at times, and don't want to be different because they think they might get critiqued or made fun of. Like, live on the wild side. Like, be yourself. Like, try something different. Be you, and see how that might work out for you.
Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. My name is Max, and I really want to thank you for coming out and sharing your thoughts on campus. In your introduction, you mentioned Boston Celtics legend and activist for justice, Bill Russell. So I was wondering if, since you got to Boston, you've been able to develop a relationship with him, or how he's influenced you in your career and off the court.
Yes, I've had numerous conversations with Bill Russell, and he's getting older now, so he's able to communicate less and less, and then COVID and things like that. But I keep in contact with him and keep in contact with his family, and I've read his book. I went to go see his statue in Boston, which I feel like should be bigger, especially as much as they praise Bill Russell in Boston. I think his statue should be 3 times the size, to be honest. But people, forget about that. What Bill Russell went through when he was a Celtic. A lot of people might not know who Bill Russell is, but he was an NBA player, won 11 championships. He was the first African-American coach and player at the same time. He just went to the Hall of Fame recently, again as a coach and a player. I think he's the first ever to do so. He's about 80 years old now, and he played for the Boston Celtics. And he was amazing. He was good friends with Dr. Martin Luther King. He was actually at his I Had a Dream speech. But when he was in Boston, he won 11 championships, and a lot of people hated his guts. Like, literally, they did not like him whatsoever. He talks about that in his book, how much adversity that he went through. Like, people would, pranks on him. One person actually literally put feces on his wall. Like, I don't know, like, who would go through the trouble of doing something like that. But Bill Russell wasn't as much as a smooth journey for him in Boston. He actually went through a lot of racism and a lot of hate. And for him to be praised is interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. I have a relationship with him, but they praise him, but they don't praise the things that he stands for, if that makes sense. They think, I praise Bill Russell, but do you praise what he was talking about with police brutality or things of that nature? Then it's like, I don't get into that. So sometimes they celebrate people and don't celebrate what they believe in. They separate the two. But for me, I refuse to entertain people who are feeding into my demise. Like, you're not a fan of me if you're racist. Like, I mean that. Like, don't wear my jersey, don't come to my game. Like, don't separate the two. And I think people do, and that's the thing. But Bill Russell is great, and I try to keep up with him as much as I can.
Totally agree. Thank you so much.
Unfortunately, that was the last audience question. I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. Actually, we're getting word that we could do 3 more. Okay, thank you.
Sweet. So hey, my name's Robert, and I just have a quick question. When you train, what's your favorite song? Like, that gets you pumped?
My favorite song right now? I don't know. I really don't. What's my favorite song right now?
Or like artist?
I don't know. I've been so focused on this, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I get you.
But I like the song with The Baddest, called The Baddest with Chris Brown. I've been playing that on repeat, low key.
Sweet. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Hi, Jaylen. Oh, isn't the mic working? Okay. Hi, Jaylen. First of all, thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm Nas. I'm a freshman at Berkeley. And I was kind of wondering, I was curious when you mentioned, say, the Panopticon, for example. Obviously, you mentioned when, say, starting in 7th grade, when you'd have to go about social media a certain way, they'd make you, do this or do that. You mentioned how that might not necessarily be you. That might, like a lot of times, you mentioned how you can't be yourself and whatnot. So I was wondering, was there a certain moment or a certain force that kind of made you realize, like, hey, they're making me be what I'm not with all these things, like within this Panopticon, for example? And also, what advice would you give to, athletes or people with major platforms who are kind of along with that idea, but might be afraid to be themselves because of repercussions?
They don't force you, so they're not telling me, like, putting a gun to my head, you need to do this or you're not gonna,
right.
But it's like a subtle you know, kind of like a microaggression in a sense where it's like if you do this, you probably will lose endorsements, and you know, you probably, you know, the society is going to push back. So I would probably steer away from it. But you can do what you want, but I would steer away from it. And I relate that to like the surveillance tower in the middle of a prison. Like if you were a prisoner and the surveillance tower's in the middle, you could still, you know, do what you want. You could still hurt somebody or commit a crime, but it probably would not be wise because they're watching. You know what I mean? So you kind of see the similarity there. They're not forcing you to do, you could do what you want, but it's like they're kind of urging you and suggesting and nudging you in a certain direction, which still bothers me the same.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jaylen. Go Bears, go Celtics.
Thank you.
Hey, Jaylen. My name's Justin. I know you're talking about the big sneaker culture shock going from Atlanta to Berkeley. And as an avid Birkenstock fan myself, I was wondering if you ever copped a fresh pair of these.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I got. Yeah, my family make fun of me for wearing Birkenstocks. So thank y'all. But yeah, Birkenstock till I drop, you know.
You still have a pair?
Do I still have a pair?
Yeah.
Yeah, multiple, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one last question.
What's going on, brother?
What's up, brother?
I got to take the mic out. It's too small. But I'm a former teammate of Jaylen Brown, both here at Cal and with the Celtics. My name is Jabari Bird. Quick question. You talked about being here at Cal, but not really having fun playing basketball. And when I heard that, it reminded me back to a conversation we had about how we see ourselves. It was during Real Talk with Coach Marco.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone kind of had like a generic answer. We didn't really want to be there. And then you were kind of half asleep, and you said, I see myself as a visionary. Mm-hmm. And I've seen you grow as a visionary, as a young man, as a person, and as an athlete. So I want to ask you today, from all these people, what's your vision for yourself as far as maximizing your gifts off the court?
First off, I love you, bro.
Love you too, brother.
For me, my vision is to try to maximize my potential to the utmost. I think God has given me gifts and talent in order to bless others, so I measure my success by how many people that I help, not by how many dollars that I make. It's a big difference. So my vision is to try to put things in place that'll help people for a very, very, very long time, and longer after I'm gone. And people say it all the time, but I mean it when I say it. If people remember me for just being Jaylen Brown, the basketball player, I think my life will be underwhelming for me. So my vision is to try to help people, and me and you could do it together, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, wait a minute. I got the last question, Jay. You're all right. Hey, Jaylen, I was just standing here for a minute, no more questions, but I'm a teacher, so
yes, sir.
Before we leave, all the young people and everything, what books should they read? Give them a book to read. Give them something.
What you suggest?
I'd say Wretched of the Earth, but that might be a little too much.
I have a long list of books. I'll give a few that I like to suggest that kind of have shaped my life. There's one book that I read that I really like. It's called The War of Art. I forget the name of the author right now, for what my mind is on other stuff, but it talks about adversity. It talks about resistance, and like every human goes through resistance on this planet, right? It's like something that you're not exempt of. Like we all gonna experience adversity to some shape or form. The more you get comfortable with it, the more your life will be, you know, a little bit more peaceful. Like when things start to happen in adversity, rather than looking at it as an inconvenience, look at it as it's always something good on the other side of adversity. So all you gotta do is push through. Sometimes, you know, people, you know, hit their first level of adversity and they never get to see the reward or the blessing that was on the other side because they just stop. And, you know, there was so many things waiting for him. All he had to do was just keep going. So The War of Art is one book that I would like to suggest. Another book I would like to suggest, I got so many stuff that's coming to my mind, for real. Soul on Ice. Go check that out. Let me think. Up From Slavery, Booker T. Washington. What's a good book? Another book that a friend of a friend of mine has wrote that's like a little bit lighter is called Chop Wood and Carry Water. I've suggested this book a million times. Some of you might have seen it already, but it's definitely a book talking about, mindset, etc. I think that most of you guys, they used to make us read Mindset by Carol Dweck when you first entered the university. I don't know if any of you guys read that book, but having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset is dope. So a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, I think that would be a good one for sure. But there's so many books out there, sometimes it's hard to like really think about it. But that's it, I guess. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you again for answering all of our questions. I'd now like to transition to our closing remarks. At the end of all of our events, we like to surprise our speaker with a little present, and this event is no exception. I know you said you liked the posters earlier and you wanted to take a picture, but we have a framed poster for you. This was made by one of our students on our communications team, Ashna, and we're just really excited to be able to, give you a little token of our appreciation for coming here today. We have other upcoming events. We have a Facebook Live/Zoom webinar with Andrew Cortina, the co-founder of Venmo, on September 27th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And with that, we'd like to thank you all for coming. If you have any feedback about how our event went, feel free to scan the QR code or use the tinyurl.com/tbffeedbackf21, as we believe that we can always continue to grow with a growth mindset. Also, feel free to like us on Facebook or visit our website at berkeleyfarm.org. I'd once again like to just implore everyone to thank Mr. Jaylen Brown again for coming today. Have a great night.